Scientists warn that a magnitude 9 earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone could send a 100-foot tall tsunami slamming into the west coast, Michael Snyder reports. We're being told that someday an absolutely massive earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone will send a gigantic wall of water towards the west coast of the United States, and we're talking about a disaster that would be greater than anything we've ever witnessed in the entire history of our country so far. And scientists are openly warning us that it is just a matter of time before this happens. It's being projected that the wall of water could be up to 100 feet tall, and it will cause immense devastation. Buildings will be flattened, vehicles will be picked up and tossed around like toys. The countless numbers of people will instantly go into their watery graves, and if you directly are in the path of such a tsunami, there will be no escape. That's after the earthquake destruction, is the tsunami. The Cascadia subduction zone has been making lots of headlines lately, and the following comes from an article that was recently posted by NBC News. A silent colossus lurks off the Pacific coast, threatening hundreds of miles of coastline with tsunamis and devastating earthquakes. For decades, scientists have warned about the potential of the Cascadia subduction zone, a megathrust fault that runs offshore along the coast from northern Vancouver Island to Cape Mendocino, California. When the fault, or even a portion of it, next snaps, it will reshape life in Oregon, Washington, and northern California. It has been more than 300 years since we have seen a megathrust earthquake happen along the Cascadia subduction zone, and so for most of us, it is difficult to imagine what that would look like. According to IFL Science, such an earthquake could produce tsunami waves that travel at speeds of up to 500 miles an hour. Megathrust earthquakes are the most powerful on Earth, and they arise from subduction zones where one of the Earth plates is slipping over another. When rock on a convergent plate boundary gets compressed and bent, it builds up elastic energy, and when it gets too much energy, there's an abrupt release as the overriding plate slides up the fault. As a plate slips and releases, it generates enormous amounts of energy that goes out into the surrounding seawater. That energy displaces water as it rises to the sea surface, raising it above the normal surface level. It then comes crashing down thanks to gravity, sending the energy shooting out horizontally in the form of a tsunami. The resulting waves can travel over 804 kilometers an hour, that's 500 miles an hour. I'm sitting here trying to imagine what a wall of water traveling at 500 miles per hour would look like, and I'm having a very difficult time envisioning. Well, I would say it goes as fast as a jet airplane. Now, in addition to moving at astonishing speed, we're also being told that the wall of water could be 100 feet or higher. The plates can periodically lock up and build stress over wide areas, eventually to be released when they finally lurch against each other. And the result, the world's greatest earthquakes, shaking both seabed and land, and generating tsunamis 100 feet high or more. A team of scientists that has been studying the Cascadia subduction zone just released their findings, and what they discovered is extremely alarming. They found that the Cascadia subduction zone is actually made up of 4 different segments, and that actually makes it even more dangerous than previously believed. Using underwater mapping techniques, scientists have mapped the Cascadia subduction zone, a 600-mile fault line extending from southern Canada to northern California, in never-before-seen detail. It's revealed that the fault splits into 4 segments instead of being one continuous strip like most fault lines. The discovery could prove more catastrophic because the tectonic plates can slide under each other, creating more pressure and more severe earthquakes. The researchers concluded the Cascadia subduction zone has the potential to unleash a 9+ magnitude earthquake. This particular team of scientists is also warning that when the next megathrust earthquake happens in the region, it could cause more than $80 billion in damage. If an earthquake of over 9 magnitude struck the west coast U.S., it would generate tsunamis reaching 100 feet high or more. Victims would be over 10,000 people, causing over $80 billion in damages in just Oregon and Washington alone. Disaster emergency plans in Oregon and Washington warn that in the aftermath of a quake that big, they could face a wave of long-term deaths due to disease from exposure to, of course, towmain, dead bodies, animal carcasses, contaminated water, and hazmat spills from commercial, industrial, and household sources. I know that this sounds really bad, but others actually believe that the damage will be even worse. In an article I published last year, the writer says, I included a very ominous quote from the former head of FEMA's Region X. He once warned that when a really big earthquake finally strikes the Cascadia subduction zone, everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast. If the entire zone gives way at once, an event that seismologists can call a full margin rupture, the magnitude will be somewhere between 8.7 and 9.2, and that's a very huge earthquake. By the time the shaking has ceased and the tsunami has receded, the region will be unrecognizable. Kenneth Murphy, who directs FEMA's Region X, the division responsible for Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska, says, our operating assumption is that everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast. In the Pacific Northwest, everything west of Interstate 5 covers some 140,000 square miles, including Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, Eugene, Salem, the capital city of Oregon, Olympia, the capital of Washington, and some 7 million people. This is not a hypothetical scenario which may or may not happen someday. Scientists assure us that it's just a matter of time before a big quake happens. And I'm entirely convinced that it will happen sooner rather than later because our planet has become very unstable. As I discussed earlier this week, the number of billion-dollar disasters hit an all-time high in 2023. Sadly, we will probably break that record again this year, and if you live in a high-risk area, you may want to take note of what's happening. Things have been relatively quiet along the West Coast for a while, but someday disaster will suddenly strike and millions of lives will be completely turned upside down. This is by Michael Snyder on End of the American Dream. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. This is by Michael Snyder. About the author, Michael Snyder's extremely controversial new book entitled Chaos is available in paperback and for Kindle on Amazon. He's also written 7 other books that are available on Amazon, including End Times, 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophets and the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters. When you purchase any of Michael's books, you help to support the work he's doing. You can also get his articles by email as soon as he publishes them by subscribing to his Substack newsletter. Michael has published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and The Most Important News, and he always freely and happily allows others to republish those articles on their own websites. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, we strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.